And it's 1, 2, 3, 4. What are you fighting for? Hey, I don't give a damn. Next up is Vietnam. Welcome all to my first vlog, and it's going to be in 3 parts: the good, the bad, and the ugly of living permanently retired in Vietnam, living permanently in Vietnam for any age group, coming here as a tourist for 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, or living here 3 months. I'm going to go through about 11 points, I believe, on why I think it is the best place to retire. But overall, it's the economy, stupid. It's a quote from James Carville, who was Bill Clinton's political consultant and helped to get him elected 2 times. Before I start, I just want to mention that my lips are very dry and I tend to smack them together. So please excuse that little face reaction. But I really don't have any choice. As we get older, things start to go wrong. So the music in the background is Jimi Hendrix, the one and only, singing All Along the Watchtower from the great lyricist Bob Dylan in the mid-60s. Of course, the song has been made much more famous by Jimi Hendrix because of his arrangement and, of course, the fabulous guitar work. I also sang some lyrics from Country Joe and the Fish. Both songs are anti-war songs, and I will play some of these songs as background music occasionally in the next 3 vlogs. I moved here in December of 2012. I visited a few countries where I wanted to retire because around 2010 I realized that I did not have enough money to retire where I really wanted to, which probably would be Spain. My first wife was Spanish, and I really loved the food and the people and touring around Spain. But that was 45 years ago. I'm sure things have changed. But anyway, I found that I didn't have enough money to retire where I really wanted to, so I visited a few countries, places like Nicaragua. But I found visiting Vietnam in 2012 about 5 times that I felt the most comfortable and it was the most affordable. There's been a number of vloggers who have compared Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, on where you should retire. Most of them concluded that it was the Philippines because the biggest reason was they spoke English. Well, I've lived here over 12 years and I found that you don't have to have English. I've met a number of men and women here who live here permanently who don't speak Vietnamese, and they get along quite well and there's no real issues with them in living here at all. So you don't need English. I just heard myself. I'm going to correct that. What I meant to say in my 2 English comments was that you don't need all Vietnamese to speak English. And of course, you always have a cell phone, a smartphone, that can translate for you when you find yourself in a situation where the Vietnamese do not speak English. So it's not necessary for you to learn Vietnamese and for every person you contact here to speak English. So I just thought I'd correct that. Now, my biggest reason for living here is that the economy is so good and growing every year by an average GDP increase of about 6%. None of the other countries come close. So it's always a place where things are happening. It's more and more, well, tourists are coming also, but a lot of people have retired here and live here permanently. I met a 21-year-old guy from France, and he's been here already 6 years and loves living here. The economy allows the people here to have some hope. And more people are becoming middle class, and they are saving more money and spending it and buying things like real estate. So people here have more hope than I think, especially the Philippines. With the economy going so well, a lot of people come and live here full time. Before COVID, there was about 40,000 expats living here. I have no idea how many today. The average income for expats was $80,000 a year. That is humongous income to live in a country where the cost of living is between 1/6 and 1/8 what it is, say, in the US, Australia, Great Britain. So if you're living here and have a good job as an expat, you really live extremely well. There's also many English teachers here from different countries. I have a good friend who's Polish and he teaches English and makes quite a good living out of it. Most of them earn around $3,000 a month. The average income here is between $350 and $400 US. So even they, if that's the only thing they're doing full time, they live extremely well. If you're going to come here to investigate and look at if it's the right country for you, definitely do not come for 1 week or 2 weeks. Minimum is 1 month. And I suggest 3 months. There are many places you can go to. I recommend the larger cities. There are a lot of issues in cities like Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi. The smaller cities, I think, would be much more compatible if you're just interested in seeing if you want to live here. And in that time, you can visit Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi to see if they're better suited to you. Cities like Da Nang, Hue, Quy Nhon are all very beautiful and much smaller, easy to get around, and I think the people are a little bit more friendly because the stress is less living in smaller cities. All that being said, I moved here in December 2012 and I met a young woman, she was only 20 at the time, in a bar. She was working behind the bar and we became really good friends. And she took me under her wing. She introduced me to her family. I had dinner with them many times. And after I moved here, actually, I was having dinner, lunch with them, eating with them at least once a day. And I knew then that, amongst other things, which I'll mention later, that this was something that the West was losing very, very quickly. That is family, extended family, and family connections. And I felt that if I moved here, I could become part of their family, but also other people I met. I was hope that I will have an extended family within my own circle of friends as well. That has turned out to be true and untrue. It is still difficult to become close to any people of any country because of the culture differences. I do have some good friends here, but as anywhere in the world, it's really difficult to get really, really close to anybody. The second reason is age. Living here more than 12 years, I have not encountered one time where age was an issue. Not 1 second of age discrimination have I encountered in Vietnam. For Vietnamese, age means that you have experience, you have knowledge, and they have the utmost respect for their elders. I'm not saying they listen to them all the time, but they really treat you with enormous amount of respect because of your age. I've worked here a couple of times for short periods. I can go in, I'll talk about that later as well, but they really, really treated me, not because I was much older than them, because they treated me with so much respect, because after I worked with them for a short period, they realized my knowledge and experience of the topics and the companies I was working for were much greater than theirs. And in fact, a couple of them told me they were a little bit in fear of me because I would find things wrong with their work. And they were a little bit in trepidation of meeting me every time we were discussing these projects. But I really enjoyed working with these guys, they're engineers, architects, and I only have the utmost respect for them as well. They're fairly young, around 30, under 35, and they really showed me so much respect at all times. Your personality and how much you respect them is the key to enjoying life in Vietnam and working in Vietnam. The next reason to move here is transportation. 90% of the people move around on motorbikes. Small motorbikes, also referred to as scooters. These motorbikes are either fully manual, semi-manual, or automatics. If you come here, you should buy an automatic. They're so easy to drive. I've been a car guy my whole life, and I had to learn to ride a bike and then ride it well in the first few years I got here. I've owned all types of bikes, and also very large CC bikes, which I really enjoy because I've always enjoyed driving fast. And occasionally recklessly, but it's very dangerous here. You should watch some YouTubes of people recording what it's like, the traffic in Vietnam. It's horrendous. But anyway, bikes, you can buy a bike for a few $100s up to $10,000. Most bikes are selling for under $5,000. Quite good bikes, Hondas, Yamahas. I currently ride a Vespa, 3 years old, 155cc automatic, and it's fast enough. You can beat almost any auto on the road accelerating with these scooters. And mine is, because it's a larger bike, it has disc brakes front and rear and has ABS. It's not as good as my previous Vespa, which did not have ABS, and the brakes work better than this one with ABS. Anyway, so you can drive a motorcycle here in Vietnam without a license. If the motorbike is 50 cc's or smaller. Above that, and most tourists rent these bikes, even without the right licenses, the police, if they pull you over, they simply take your money. You bribe them. It is common practice. Vietnam is all about, not all about, but bribes and corruption are illegal. But there's countries like, especially the US, where corruption is legal. Just have to look at all the companies that are lobbyists in Washington, D.C. Very large corporations spend millions and millions of dollars lobbying government officials and government representatives in both houses to get legislation passed that benefits them. Now, I don't know why Apple has to do that, but they do it also. So, legal corruption. Here it's illegal. So, but in the end, I think it's all the same. So, you can also get permanent licenses here. If you're going to live here permanently, you can get the license. You pay an expediter to help you go through the government system, and you can get a full-time a license, permanent, for under 175cc and or over 175cc. I have both licenses because I like riding big bikes, and I've ridden them extensively. At the moment, I don't own one. And I keep vacillating between buying one and not buying one, of course, because of the high risk of having an accident in Vietnam. Because you do drive faster on a big bike, even though they're safer. So you can pay to get it, and they're actually permanent. You never have to renew it. And the same for registration. I've had one motorbike in my name as a foreigner, a foreigner, and you get a number plate starting with the letter N. It's also the same for automobiles, which I'll talk about next. But to own, I'll talk about that next. Licenses, again, are permanent. And if you don't want to get one, if you don't want to go through the hassle, they're not that expensive, a few $100s. If the police pull you over, you just pay them $50 and you move on. Occasionally, the police will get nasty. They may take your bike. It depends on your attitude a lot. I've been pulled over a few times, and occasionally 2 or 3 times, out of say the 10 times I've been pulled over for whatever reason, they've let me go. So it's possible. You're not going to get harassed all the time. As a foreigner, you get some liberties. So, moving on to autos. You can buy an auto in Vietnam. I have one, but you can't own one in your own name. So the trick is you open a company. Now, in the description of my blog, I've listed 3 companies that will help you get a company. And with opening a company, you can do many, many things. It's easier to buy an apartment, even though you can own an apartment in your name. I've already done that and sold it. The opening a company allows you to buy an auto, and with that you apply for a temporary resident card, a TRC, which is basically a visa. And the visa allows you, it's 2 years long, allows you obviously to live here, and you don't have to leave the country every 3 months, which is the average length of visas today. Before COVID, if you were a US citizen, you got a 12-month visa. And with a 2-year visa, you can do anything you want, really. Attached to the company is what sort of business you're going to do. You can list anything you want. There are some company licenses that are really difficult to get, and you have to pay much more money, like manufacturing food, running a restaurant. But if you simply list something like import-export, which I had on my first company, it's really easy. This one, it's listed as I'm a computer expert in dealing with problems and designing programs and things like that, which I am not an expert in. But my friend who got it for me, Expediter, I don't know why he did that. But you can simply go on the internet here and change what you want to do. One of my other really good friends says, you don't have to do anything. You can just run your business. It's, as long as it's not one of those businesses that require a special license, like handling food. So that's enough on that topic. Working in Vietnam. Let me go back to the reasons why you'll get a ticket while driving, especially on a motorbike. One is not wearing a helmet. It is the craziest thing you see around all over Vietnam is a lot of people not wearing helmets. You can get severe brain damage just by dropping the bike if your head hits the curb. Many foreigners are not wearing their helmets. And the quality of the helmets are really low anyway. I mean, you can buy them for $2 or $3. Mine cost nearly $200, made in Italy. It's quite large and I look a little silly in it, but if I drop the bike, at least hopefully I won't get brain damage. Second reason is if you're not carrying all the paperwork. Of course, you may not have a license here, driver's license, and you will just pay a fine of $20, $30, and 95% of the time the police will let you go. The other document is registration of the vehicle. Up until just about 3 years ago, the government did not start to enforce the change of ownership on the registration certificate. Now they're trying to force people that sell their bikes to also change the ownership papers. It's still not 100%, but if you do not have the original ownership registration card with you, they will fine you. I do not carry mine around because I lost it once many years ago on another bike, and there's no way to find the owner because people move mainly, and some bikes are registered in their hometowns all over Vietnam. So again, you pay a small fine and on you go. The other reason, of course, is not driving with your lights on at night. I got one ticket for that reason. Driving in the wrong lane. If you drive on the left of the road, you will get a ticket. If there's a designated broken line or solid line, you have to ride on the right side of it. Again, I've had a ticket for that. Turning. One of the favorite police, why the police stop you is because you haven't indicated. Vietnamese hate to indicate. I would say less than half indicate regularly. So the police, when they're on their weekly, monthly locations for pulling you over and collecting revenue for themselves, illegally of course, a lot of them are at a corner, and as you turn the corner, if you have an indicator, they will pull you over. Again, all these fines are very low for a foreigner anyway. For Vietnamese, it's between $5 and $30. For a Westerner, anywhere between $10 and $50. Of course, speeding is an issue as well. Now, our next topic is working in in Vietnam. Actually, let me just quickly give you a brief history, because I referred to America and Los Angeles. I was born in Greece in early 1952, and we migrated to Australia in 1956, the year of the Olympics in Melbourne, Australia. And I grew up there, went to university, got a degree in structural engineering. In the 70s, I got married. My first wife, went to Europe for a year, worked in London for 6 months, and then returned to Australia because my wife was homesick. Another mistake. And I worked at the university as a senior tutor at the school I went to, Melbourne University. And then I left my wife, left my job, and moved to the US to do some personal psychotherapy, which I really felt I needed to do. I'll talk about that in another video. And I lived in Los Angeles for a total of 32 years, and 1 year in New York in 1981. And that's why I'll be referencing US dollars and what life is like, or what's happened to me in America. Now, back to work. I'm looking at my notes. So I just checked my notes again. Working in Vietnam, as I mentioned earlier, there were about 40,000 expats living permanently in Vietnam before COVID. My guess would be at least half returned back to their home countries as COVID hit, and most of them have not returned yet. One of the main reasons, of course, is that the economy internationally also has suffered a big blow, and here in Vietnam it's been the same, except for the very large companies who have huge manufacturing plants here. They all seem to be doing quite well. The real estate market here did collapse to a large extent during COVID, and it hasn't recovered, as the government here is trying to control real estate, apartment construction, office construction, and the prices. So interest rates went up considerably to over 10%. They've come back down now to just over 6%. But real estate will probably not recover for another, excuse me, again, probably about a year. There are a number of professions that are recommended to work here in Vietnam. Mr. Jung from Jung Global Business has compiled a list. I've watched him a few times. He has quite a good vlog on YouTube. And his main list is for professionals is if you open a small business here, like as an investor. One guy, American Vietnamese, came here a few years ago and started a chain of convenience stores and has opened, I believe, more than 25 around the country. And I've seen his stores. They seem to be doing very well. Becoming a pilot. Pilots, well, obviously internationally now, vacation, travel, business has got back to almost normal. I was talking to a woman after my boxing class the other day. She's been living here for 15 years. She's from Australia, and she's a pilot, and before COVID, they were getting paid a salary. During COVID, after COVID now, they are getting paid for the actual number of hours they are in the air. And I asked her if the salary was the same. She said, no, it's less. Obviously, because, I mean, how many planes leave on time? How long do you sit on the runway before you taxi in to depart? What other jobs did he recommend? Where's my notes again? Here we go. Logistics. Logistics is huge in Vietnam because of the manufacturing industries. Also, things like wood products, fish. There's a huge expansion of fish farming here. Most of it's done in the ocean, but more and more it's been done inland, especially shrimp, of course. So logistics, the price of a container now apparently has tripled. So, but the business itself is booming. So you can get into that, of course. Engineering. Engineering has many parts. One is my profession, which is structural engineering. There are a lot of projects still going on in Vietnam that require different types of engineers. And not so much architects, but I think we have to wait another year or so before that part of real estate begins to improve significantly. They're the main ones he talks about. And so let's see. Work, as I was saying, there are many, many opportunities here. Personally, I've had 2 full-time jobs, but both lasted very short times. The first one I got fired because I tried to change the working culture, and I talked to a couple of senior architects, and they complained, I don't know what about, But I was soon let go and I never received permanent status in the company. My second job was actually started during COVID as an architectural designer. My focus was mainly on high-rise buildings and resorts. In my previous unpaid work at a couple of companies, I designed about 13 projects, residential projects, town planning projects, high-rise buildings, and especially resorts. Only one of them, the company I worked for, only was able to sell one of the projects, and I don't know what's happening with it. I know they started in Queenon, about 600 kilometres north of here. I'll go there one day and check out to see if it ever got fully realised. And again, you don't need English here. You don't need to speak Vietnamese, and you don't need all the staff to speak English. One or two is sufficient for you to get by in working here in Vietnam. A lot of middle management and upper management speak quite good English. My last job, my immediate boss, his boss, and the chairman of the company spoke English, especially my immediate boss. He spoke very good English. He worked in Singapore for a few years. So you can get by without learning Vietnamese. And as I was saying, there are many international schools here, quite a few in fact, and they're quite expensive, from $2,000 a month to $10,000 a month for the best of them. When I first came here, I actually visited my second cousin, who was living here and teaching fine arts at the Australian International School. Her husband was teaching physical education, and they had 2 young kids here. And when I went to pick up the kids a couple of times, I was listening to the students who were teenagers, and their English was absolutely excellent. And you compare that to a lot of Vietnamese I've spoken to, and many, many times they're speaking English to me, and I have no idea what they're talking about. My girlfriend is the same sometimes. So I have to ask them to repeat it, or we have to do a translation on our smartphones. The next item is women. Why do expats, Westerners, especially retire in countries like Vietnam? It's the women, stupid. Yes and no. I find Vietnamese women extremely attractive, on average much more attractive than any other Southeast Asian country, easily for me. You walk down the road, or in the area I am in, you drive around, and a couple of my people that have visited here from Australia take their eyes off the road while they're driving because they see another beautiful woman. So this is a very big reason why Westerners come and retire here. And there's a lot of younger people between 20 and 50 I see working, driving around in Ho Chi Minh City. So there's a lot of men here that are not retired. There's also a lot of younger women here. I've actually only seen one woman around my age in Ho Chi Minh by herself. There are many couples here that are retired in their 60s and 70s. But there's also a lot of young women here. I'm really surprised. And it looks like, I'm guessing half of them are working here and the other half are long-term vacations. I've had a number of relationships here I'm in one now for over 2 years, and it's just as difficult, I'll say, as a relationship with any woman in any part of the world. It's just different because the cultures are different, and your expectations, their expectations are different depending on the culture. If you accidentally get a woman pregnant here, you are not responsible for any alimony of any sort. You don't have to pay the woman any money if you're not married. Once you're married and you have a child, then you become responsible for the child as well. Marriage, of course, I've met a number of men here married to younger Vietnamese women, quite a few. A lot of them seem to be very happy. Obviously, some are not, but they've decided to marry foreigners because of the financial reasons and security. They, I think, stay in them as long as they can, and of course, the divorce rate here is climbing quickly as well. But that's, I think, more to do with as women here become more educated, more experienced, making more money than the guys. The women don't put up with the guys here anymore. And of course, a lot of women, very attractive women, have told me they will not date a Vietnamese guy because they're living way in the past, quite chauvinistic. And I've listened to some Vietnamese guys speaking English, which they don't consider women equal here, for the most part, not yet anyway. So, sex. I've had a number of girlfriends here. When I first came here, I used to party a lot in the first couple of years. Then I got onto some dating apps and met a lot of women, went out a lot. And I think this is the best way. If you're not very social, you don't have to go out, hang out in bars and drink. It's quite easy to pick up women if you're especially younger. But if you're not younger, when I first came here, the easiest way actually was to go onto dating apps. I had 2 girlfriends, during that 3 girlfriends that I picked up on the dating apps, and they didn't work out. But then I stopped using dating apps and just relied on my charm. And I met many women in coffee shops actually. I just started talking to them and became friends. And the other way the way I met my current girlfriend is through her friend who was a part of the family that took care of me when I first arrived in Vietnam. And I saw her many, many times before we actually dated. So the other way to have sex, of course, is to get a massage. Now, I'm going to do one show on the different types of massage parlors here and spas. There are about 5 different types. And it's reasonably easy to recognize which ones will give you a happy ending. So I won't get into that today, but in the next few episodes, I'll do one just to describe the differences, and then we'll go and do some massages together, as I find that the current crop of YouTubers, especially Koreans, there's a couple of Australians, a French guy I just saw doing massages, videos of massages, and I think they're terrible. They don't talk about the massage while it's happening. They don't instruct the masseuse what they would like, how they would like it. And I've had many massages, and because I'm much older than most clients, they give me the most, what I think, generally speaking, the most ugly masseuse they have. And a few times I've said, do you mind if I pick my own masseuse? Because they do it on a rotating system. Whoever's next in line takes the next customer. But they seem to keep getting not so attractive masseuses. So that's obviously another way you can have the three main different types of sexes if you go to the right masseuse spa. The next one is food. Vietnamese food, I'm sure most people in the world have tried it. There's a huge Vietnamese community in countries like Australia, France, Los Angeles, and I've eaten Vietnamese food in Australia a few times, and in LA a couple of times. The problem is, it's great to find a very good restaurant here. It's reasonably priced, if you're on a budget here, of course. There are a lot of more expensive restaurants. You'll pay $30 for a meal, between $20 and $30, and up. There's a lot of foreign restaurants here, some great French restaurants, Italian restaurants I've eaten at. And there's a lot of street food, as you, I'm sure, have seen on YouTube. A lot of people have done vlogs on street food in Vietnam. I haven't eaten street food for many, many years. Of course, we had 3 years of almost total shutdown here during COVID. But I would not do street food unless I was really recommended. And actually, the same goes for restaurants. There's thousands of restaurants in Ho Chi Minh City. Just next to me, I live in a high-rise building, and just next to me in the last year, 5 new restaurants have opened. So it's one way Vietnamese have worked out to make money, is to open a restaurant. I ate at one of these the other week, and I was really, really disappointed. A couple look much more attractive. I might try it with my girlfriend one day. But look up on YouTube, excuse me, look up on the internet and find some restaurants you would like to eat at that have good reviews. Most of the time they're very good, but occasionally you will be disappointed. There are a lot of vegetarian restaurants here. There used to be a fabulous soup, a pho place, and it moved, but it didn't indicate where it was moving to. And it was just over $1 for a nice bowl of soup, different type of vegetarian, depending on where it was originated from around the country. It was fabulous food, really, really, really good. But I haven't been able to find one comparable to that. I am basically 90-95% vegetarian. I have been like that now for almost 50 years. Our next item to discuss is buying an apartment. I have to check my list. There's still got a few more items to discuss. I did buy an apartment about 6 years ago. When the law changed here, it allowed foreigners to buy apartments. It restricts what you can buy. Certain projects don't have a license to sell to foreigners. Not every building can get that license for some reason. I was living actually in quite an old building, but they allowed that building to high-rise at around 13, 14 stories. It allowed it to for foreigners to buy apartments. And I renovated it and sold it, 3 years later. I got my money back, but I lived in the apartment rent-free. It was a lot of work to renovate without getting into anything negative at the moment. One thing you cannot own in Vietnam is the land. You can, most projects, 35% of the apartments or villas you can buy, but somehow, if you're going to buy a villa, I don't know how it works, you can own the building, but you cannot own the land. All land in Vietnam is considered, it's owned by the people or the Communist Party, and it can be bought by Vietnamese citizens only, and they have a 100-year lease on that land. As a foreigner, you get a 50-year lease on the apartment you buy. When I say apartment, I mean buy to own apartment, a condominium. So, I've been through visas, how to get a visa, a 2-year visa so you don't have to come and go travel outside the country to get a new visa. At the moment, they're maximum of 3 months. But I've explained, you just open a company and that'll get you a TRC and a 2-year visa. And then you can just live here. Of course, I forget to mention, you can get married. If you get married, then you get a 5-year visa. But after 5 years, you do have to leave the country and come back and get another 5-year visa. The Vietnamese government hasn't worked out yet how to deal with expats, retiring expats, even foreigners who marry Vietnamese. You cannot become a citizen here if you're a foreigner, no matter what. If you're Vietnamese and I believe you were born outside of the country, you can come back and get a Vietnamese passport. But that's about it. Next is the cost of living. The cost of living in Vietnam is anywhere between $1,000 US to $2,000 US. Apartments cost varies from about $100 up to a few $1,000s. I normally pay around $400 for an apartment. When I first lived here, I was paying $100 for a studio. There are quite a few nice apartments around the area I live in for between $400 and up to $2,000. Even some villas here, but you're paying at least $2,000 for a small villa. The food, every area has a street market, which you can buy almost anything, any type of food and fruit, vegetables, meat, chicken, fish, crustaceans, quite reasonably priced. I've been eating organic food for nearly 50 years when I can buy it in which city I'm living in. And you can buy a lot of fruit and vegetables here at this smallish supermarket that I shop at. Most of the food there is organic. They have 2 parts, like even the large supermarkets here now have some organic food, or you can buy non-organic. The organic is between 20% to 100% more expensive, depending on what you're buying. So, and being vegetarian, it's much cheaper to eat, of course. So I spend about $400 a month on food, and occasionally a bit more. It's a choice I make. Occasionally I buy food on the street at these markets. In fact, I buy half my fruit at a couple of stalls that the fruit looks really great, and I've eaten it for a long time now, and it seems perfect. I don't know if it is. One of the problems with buying food outside of the supermarkets is that you don't know whether or not what type of water they're using. So that's my biggest fear, really. Where I live, there's a huge expat community. The other one is in District 7. And they have a lot of supermarkets, smallish, not huge, that have a lot of foreign foods. You can even buy Vegemite, that paste bread spread that comes from Australia that has a very strong odour and taste. You can buy 20 different types of Italian spaghettis, canned sauces, bottled sauces, all the Western spices you can think of. It's just like being in a Western supermarket. They have literally everything you could possibly need if you're a Westerner and only want to buy Western food. So food is not an issue, but if you want those special Western items, they're going to cost you. The other cost of living, that's apartments, food, entertainment, that's up to you, of course. You can spend anywhere between $10 up to as high as you like when you go out and party. A glass of beer is, around where I live at the bars, is around $4. To buy the same bottle or can is $1 or less. Excuse me. And the next item is women. If you date women here, you're going to pay. That's the bottom line. Don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise. It's going to cost you to date a woman here anywhere between $100. I had one girlfriend who I did not have to pay anything. She had a good job. She didn't need any support. She had good family support. She had a really good job, as I said. All the other women I've dated, I had to support. So you're going to pay anywhere from $100 to $1,000, depending on the woman, depending how rich you are, depending on how much you want to pay to be with this woman, but it's going to cost you. An old friend of mine said, Vietnamese, she said it's cheaper just to go to a massage parlour if you want to have sex. Anyway, so plus of course motorbike maintenance, gasoline is around 90 cents a litre, but if you're riding a motorbike, you're getting per 100 kilometres, you're getting 2 litres. You're using 2 litres, which is super cheap. You get in an auto, it becomes like the same price as in a Western country, but the gas is still a lot cheaper. So as I said just now, it's going to cost you, I think, a minimum, if you want to live well in Vietnam, $1,500 a month. If you want to live a bit more extravagantly, it's going to cost you at least $2,000 US a month. Two more items to go. The next item is the weather. Ho Chi Minh has one of the most consistent weather patterns I've ever been in. There's 2 seasons here, wet season and dry season. And the temperature is almost identical the whole year during the day and at nighttime. During the day, it hovers between 31 to 36, and at nighttime, 20 to 25, maximum 26. It is consistent. 10 years here, more than 10 years, and it doesn't change. I am feeling a slight change in the weather pattern now due to global warming. Melbourne, where I grew up, the weather's nothing like it was when I was growing up. In the middle of summer, it gets quite cold. You get massive downpours in the middle of summer in Australia now, especially, well, Melbourne at least, which I know. So, but it's still in Saigon, very, very consistent and a little boring. But you know exactly what you're going to be wearing every day. And this is shorts, top, t-shirt. Sometimes I wear a short sleeve shirt, which I had made for working, just to wear them because otherwise I wouldn't. When I go for a longer bike ride, when I go into District 1, the CBD, I try to remember to wear a long sleeve shirt so I don't burn my skin anymore like an idiot, which I did growing up, and also into my mid-40s when I was doing some long distance running. So the weather, I won't get into what Vietnamese think of the weather here, but Hanoi's actually got 4 seasons, and the winter is quite cold and rains a lot. It rains a lot in Saigon. It floods in Saigon. I mean, I've ridden in 2 feet of water here on my motorbike. Luckily, the carburetor's above the water line. So it's can get quite nasty, but I don't mind it because it's hot. Everyone stops, put on their raincoat ponchos, and off they go. So finally, the medical institutions here in Vietnam. I have been to Western hospitals. I've been to Vietnamese hospitals. I've seen personal doctors, and they're all relatively cheap. My dentist, who was recommended to me from my cousin's friend in Australia, somehow they knew each other. Oh, I remember now. A friend of this guy, who was Vietnamese, recommended this dentist, who actually studied in Australia, in a town called Ballarat, just outside of Melbourne. There's a big dental school there. He also studied in Los Angeles, and he is an expert. I have had a lot of dental work done. I've changed about 6, 8 caps, and a lot of friends of mine and also friends of friends have come and been to see him. He is an expert. Anywhere in the world, he's as good as anybody. And in fact, I think he's better than some of the dentists I saw in LA. When I get into trouble medically, I call him. He knows a lot of experts in different medical fields. When I had an eye problem, he recommended this guy who spoke perfect English, who also studied overseas, and he actually works for the government. That's how he's, I guess, paying back in the community rather than having a private practice. And when I went, the first time I saw him, he gave me a full eye check. I mean, everything. I don't remember what it's called, but this like light spectrum, like x-rays. I mean, it would cost at minimum $1,000 to do anywhere in the Western world, minimum. And I ended up paying, I think, $100 for everything. The same with the dental work. A cap here can cost you between $50 and $100, depending on the complexity of it. And it's $1,000 in the US. I mean, the cost of medical treatment here is super low relative to the West. And I've been to years ago, I went to the Vietnamese hospital and paid like $10 to get something checked out. I've been to 2 Western style hospitals, very modern. One, the FVH, I believe, the French Vietnamese hospital. I've been there a few times. I had things checked out. It costs $25 to see the doctor, and if you need something else, they charge you extra. I went to what's called the American hospital closer to me here, where I live, a new facility. It's only a few years old, 3 years old, and for a couple of things. And one time I went, I saw the ear specialist. My right ear, my left ear doesn't clean itself, drain itself properly. And the wax builds up and it just clogs my ear. And I felt like I hadn't cleaned it for many years. And I went to see him, and he was a great guy. He put a camera in my ear and flushed it out, and I could see it on the screen as he was flushing my ear out. That was a $50 total cost to see the doctor and flush my ear out. I mean, it's super cheap relative to the US. Drugs here, sometimes they're generic, but sometimes they're original, are really super low. And you can go and buy drugs here. The chemists here in the pharmacies have some medical knowledge. They've been trained to have some medical knowledge. So you don't have to go see a doctor. You go in there and you say you have a rash, and they'll look at it and say, well, try this. And I've done that a few times for simple things. And most of the time it works, and sometimes it doesn't, because like one time I went to the American hospital when I had a bad rash. Excuse me. And I didn't want to trust the chemist who diagnosed me. So I went to the hospital and saw the skin specialist and so forth. She gave me some cream and some tablets. So that's it. That's the first podcast, the good things about living in Vietnam. If you have a comment, I'd love to hear from you. If you want something explained in more detail, please comment. If I've missed something, please comment, and I will give you my experience on how I have lived and survived in Vietnam. Until then, I'll see you in the next podcast, and we'll be discussing the bad things of living in Vietnam. See you guys.